Hello and welcome to Brig Speak. I'm your host, Brigadier Rakesh Bhatia. Today we will talk about attack on Langson, Kauban and Lokai, the orbit of the PLA. The entire PLA forces were divided into two fronts. Northern front was based on military regions of Shenyang, Beijing, Jinan, Lanzhou and Xinjiang. The northern front was responsible to cater for any threat from the Soviet Union, while the southern front was made responsible for carrying out operations inside Vietnam. The southern front was based on two wings, eastern wing based on Guangzhou military region and the western wing which had formations from the Kunming military region. A total of 31 division consisting of 330,000 persons, which constituted 10% of the PLA strength at that time, was part of the Southern Front. The overall commander of the front was the Eastern Wing commander, that is Shu Seo, and his deputy was Yang Daisy from the Western Wing. Air Force officer Zhang Tengfa was the chief of staff. Before we proceed, it is very important to understand Mao's military thinking on strategic offensive. Mao had died in 1976 and PLA was still following his thoughts while carrying out operations. Mao said the main objective of an offensive should be destruction of enemy's effective strength and not holding or seizing a city or place. He said that in every battle, we must concentrate on absolute superiority. That is, 2, 3, 4, or if possible, up to 6 times of superiority. He also advocated that PLA must encircle enemy forces completely and close all routes of ingress and egress, and thereafter launch overwhelming strength to destroy the enemy forces. This aspect was at play while planning for the operations by PLA. And of course, he said, do not fight a battle when you are not prepared and sure of winning. Now, what was Chinese overall plan? Chinese wanted to quickly occupy a strip along the border, which was few kilometers in depth. So the border towns of Caobang, Longson, and Lokai were selected as the target for the phase 1. From the springboard achieved in phase 1, more assaults can be planned. China was also sure that this campaign should be limited in time and space because they were seeking only political aim and they did not want to get bogged down as the US. The main aim was destruction of Vietnamese military forces and weakening its national defense because the overall political aim of China was to carry out a punitive action against Vietnamese army. The aim was never to hold any ground. It was similar to what the Chinese did in 1962 in the Sino-India War. They wanted to annihilate regional troops and also few regular units. Destruction of Vietnamese economic bases was also part of the plan because the Chinese believed that for next few decades, Vietnam will not be able to attack China. The outline plan is as shown on the map. The attack began on 17th February 1979 towards Caobang, Lokai, and Dong Dang, which is north of Langson. It continued till 25th of February, and thereafter all efforts were concentrated towards Langson. Aim was to threaten Hanoi, claim victory, and withdraw. The three objectives consequences were that on 25th of February, on completion of phase 1, railhead at Dong Dang was captured, and Hanoi was in fact threatened. At end of phase 2 on 5th of March, there was a partial success in east and Cao Bang was threatened. It was not captured by that time. And on 5th of March, PLA started demolishing military installations in border region, and till 16th of March, the withdrawal was completed. This is called scorched earth policy, a strategy that involves destroying anything that could help an enemy fight a war. Keep the overall aim of China in mind. I will repeat, it was to ensure that Vietnam is not able to raise its head for next few decades after the destruction which has been brought upon by the PLA. 17th February, 5 a.m., a wave of artillery fire opened up all along the borders. 1 lakh soldiers advanced across the border. Lokai Northwest was special focal point as it had a railhead leading to Hanoi. Deng was fearing escalation, so there was no air support, though the Vietnamese do claim that bombardment was carried out by the Chinese Air Force. Middle and low ranking officers were debarred from making their own judgments and adjust to a condition. The war was controlled at the highest level. PLA followed its human wave tactics, wherein waves and waves of soldiers were sent to attack well fortified defenses of Vietnam. At the end of this phase, the only worthwhile success was capture of Dong Dang, where they met the first regular army of the Vietnam called Flying Tiger Regiment. Till now, the PLA was fighting against the militia and the local troops. Now, this is what happened on 17th February, as you can see on the map. Pay attention to West, where 42 Division of 14 Army attacked Lai Kau. 11th Army and 13th Army targeted Lo Khai and Hoc Kang. Going clockwise, 41 Army was addressing Cao Bang and Dong Khe, and in the northeast, 42 Army attacked Dong Dang, which is north of Long Son. Mong Kai, which is a coastal town, was also attacked by 155 Division X 55 Army. Look at the location of Lao Khai. There is a railway line that comes to Hanoi, and the other railway line is from Long Son. Chinese had appreciated that Long Son would be well fortified and strengthened by the Vietnamese. So that is why they did not attack Long Son proper in the first phase. Lao Khai was attacked, as I said, because of the railway station, and Cao Bang was attacked to have an additional route of ingress towards Hanoi and subsequent reinforcements which were to participate in subsequent phases. On 19th of February, a small town, Mong Kuang, was captured. North Trung Khan was captured. Fight was going on at Dong Khe. Cao Bang was still intact. From northeast, Dong Dang was a success story for 55 Army. From 20th to 26th of February, the fight continued, and the status was starting from northwest. 42 Division X 14 Alpha continued to fight, but Lai Kau held up. 11 Army opened up new avenues and attacked Phong Tho. 13th Army was attacking Hao Kong. In the end, on 26th of February, Lao Kwai fell. Up north, Cao Bang was also captured by the PLA. Dongdang was captured at end of the previous phase. In southeast, Mongkai was still holding. Having seen the phase 1 attacks, now let's start with specific battle at Langson, which took place from 27th of February and continued till 5th of March. Now let's first look at importance of Langson. Langson was 85 miles to Hanoi. It has rugged mountains to north and open plains to the south. Two division approach from Dongdang and Loc Bin, cutting off all the roads in and out of Longson. Mao's military strategy in urban areas to occupy countries surrounding the city was at display. Chinese systematically started cutting off the roads to Longson. Let's see all this on a map. 43 Army moved towards north-northwest, addressing town of Loc Bin, which you can see in the right bottom of the map, moving towards Longson. 55 Army, a fresh troops were inducted after capture of Dongding and started moving towards southeast towards Longson. On completion of phase 1 of this operation, both 43 and 55 Army was to link up southwest of Longson. By doing this, PLA had effectively cut off all roads leading to Longson from Hanoi and coming from Cao Bang down south to Langson. While carrying out the operations, the dominating height of 339, 423, and Thampo in southeast of Langson were to be captured. 43 Army was successful in reducing Vietnamese resistance at Loc Bin and Chai Mai. Up from north, 55 Army from Dongding started moving towards south, that is Longson, and as I had mentioned, 55 and 43 armies, on completion of their initial objectives, had married up southwest of Longson. The aim was to isolate 3rd Division of Vietnamese Army, forcing surrender stroke destruction. Hanoi was now vulnerable to an attack. PLA did manage a ratio of 9:1 in this attack. They denied the usage of Railway or Highway 1 Alpha to the Vietnamese army by blocking the roads towards north of Longson, southwest, and southeast. The most crucial part was occupation of high ground of Mount Mao Son east of Longson, which was responsible for the reduction of Longson. Now, on 5th of March, once again, the status 55 Army had just about reached on the outskirts of Longson. Southwest of Longson was occupied by the PLA, dominating Hill 413. 43 Army had placed itself at Loc Bin and Chai Mai, blocking Highway 4 leading to Longson. Having seen Battle of Longsan, let's now concentrate on what happened in Cao Bang, north of Hanoi. Primarily, 41 Army from north and 42 Army from southeast proceeded towards Cao Bang. Assembly area was Langzhou in southeast of Cao Bang and Jiangxi to the north of Cao Bang. It was very important to capture Caoban so that movement of PLA troops could be carried out from this axis moving towards Longson. At the same time, it would also deny the Vietnamese army to reinforce defenses along Thai Nguyen That The, that is highway number 4. The 42nd Army on 22 February had taken over Pakwa, That, Quang and Dong Khe and penetrated towards Quang. Watch that Caoban was isolated by blocking all the highways. As I had mentioned earlier, PLA's aim was to use this highway to induct fresh troops to threaten Langson initially and Hanoi subsequently. Now let's come to few question answers. The first question is, where did China go wrong in the assessment? Firstly, China thought that Vietnam regular troops are away from the border because the Vietnamese army were involved in action in Cambodia. Invasion of Cambodia, we have already covered in a previous episode. China did not take into account that there are well trained and well equipped militia, and they had tremendous fighting capabilities. China assumed that they will be able to muster a superiority of 8 is to 1, but actually the ratio was just 2 is to 1. PLA till now used to survive on local population support, but in this case, there was no support from the Vietnamese local population. PLA did not train for jungle or tunnel warfare. They did not know how to deal with booby traps or landmines. To the credit of Vietnamese, they had fortified their towns well. PLA did not take into account the geography and terrain. They relied on outdated maps. This was the first time that PLA was undertaking combined arms. In past, infantry supported by armored and artillery was never ever exercised. Chinese command and control was traditional. As I said, the junior leaders did not have the liberty to take decisions. PLA, of course, underperformed because their weapons were backward and their tactics was outdated. The morale was low. It is learned that some units were forced to advance. Unfortunately for PLA, rains came down heavily, which bogged down everything, to the extent that the roads became murky and they had to resort to using horses and donkeys to transport goods. Infantry soldiers were not trained to move mounted on tanks. They used ropes to tie themselves up so that they do not fall off. This made an excellent target during an ambush. Chinese were used to attack en masse, but because of the terrain and guerrilla action of the Vietnamese army, the Chinese were forced to operate in company and platoons. This gave opportunity to Vietnamese army to deal with Chinese army piecemeal. There were orders not to advance more than 50 kilometers into Vietnam because the Chinese leadership did not want to get trapped in major battle in plains. Draw parallel to the 1962 war, where the Chinese withdrew before they touched the plains of Assam. Chinese had reserved more than half their forces inside China as fresh for replacement when needed. But because of the condition of the roads and inability to open up the access, these forces were left out of battle. Chinese employed the tactics and method of fire wave and human wave, but they wasted a lot of time in tunnel search and dynamite. In the bargain, PLA suffered heavy losses due to mine explosion, surprise attacks, encirclement, and other forms of guerrilla warfare. Now, what was the Vietnamese strategies and tactics which brought success? Vietnamese employed local troops and militia who were well trained. They weakened the Chinese forces at the border itself. Chinese were operating on extended lines of logistic. They could not move the RT, so the RT coverage to the attacking troops was limited. Vietnamese had resorted to tunnels, caves, and trenches, which were manned by well trained and well armed militia all over the mountain range. Unfamiliar with dealing with tactics and forms of warfare such as tunnel, jungle, surprise attacks, booby traps, landmines, laser weapons, and bamboo punches, means that the PLA did not learn from US experience. PLA, of course, lacked fighting experiences, and time and again the point comes that the commanders of PLA were unfamiliar with rugged terrain, and this brought enormous suffering to the PLA. Now, how the Communist Party sees a war. The war and the PLA are tools that aid in achieving party's political aim. If the party manages to achieve these goals, then PLA too is deemed to have been successful. Party believes it essential to deliver a message to Vietnam. And was it done successfully by the PLA is a question mark. I purposely did not cover the third battle, that is Battle of Lao Cai, because this episode was getting longer. With this, I come to an end. I'll request you to please like, share, and subscribe. All the best and Jai Hind.